Now playing in theaters is Sundown, starring Tim Roth and Charlotte Gainsbourg. This is the story of a family, a man and his sister and her kids who are on vacation in Acapulco, and something bad happens in the family, and the family has to rush back to England where they're from, and the Tim Roth character, the brother, can't find his passport, so he has to stay behind. We learn that he intentionally had his passport but didn't go back, and the film becomes this journey with this man as he just sort of hangs out on the beach in Acapulco while his family is desperately trying to get him to come back and deal with funeral arrangements and things like that. There's really not a lot to this film. Basically, I'm not going to get into this. Here's the deal with this movie. You don't learn about the characters. You learn about everything not up front. A Hollywood movie would be really, really bad expository dialogue right up front saying, look, you're the co-owner of a pig farm in England and the biggest meat packing plant and blah, blah, blah. They don't do this. You have to learn as the movie goes on who everybody is, and then sort of close to the end why the character was doing what he was doing and why. I go back and forth. You know, I'm not strictly a big budget Hollywood guy. That's the easiest stuff to... That's the McDonald's of cinema, which is fine. It's tasty, it goes down fast, and you know what you're going to get. The art house stuff is more like a little out-of-the-way restaurant you've never tried before. I go both ways, as they say. But this was one that I just found it boring. I'm sorry. I have a hard time with films about people who are emotionless and just stare off into space and are stoic and hardly say anything. And the majority, in the end, you learn why, but the majority of this movie was Tim Roth sitting in a folding chair on the beach, staring at the water. Now, he does other things. He meets a woman who runs like a little bodega kind of thing in that little town, and they have a relationship, and she's cool, she's good. But most of this movie is extremely low-key. It is a lot of non-actors, which generally I like, especially if it's set in a specific place, because it just makes it feel more realistic. So everybody in the film is good. Gainsbourg is not in it too much. She's sort of in it at the beginning and in it at the end. It's really Tim Roth's vehicle. And Tim Roth is good, but he's really just kind of staring off into space and being very, very quiet for most of this movie. So I always say, you know, I didn't realize I was getting a zombie film when I went to see this. It was really not for me. Now, it has critical raves. The poster that was in the theater where we saw this, it was all just pull quotes on how it's amazing and dazzling and an existential thriller and all this other stuff. I just didn't care for it. I felt it was one of those movies where I kept waiting for it to click in, or waiting for it for me to feel like there was a purpose to all this, and there really kind of wasn't until close to the end. And again, movies with characters who are distant or having an existential crisis and stare a lot, I just kind of find dull. Now, I was shocked just before I went to record this. I looked up the running time. This movie is like 83 minutes. I would have sworn it was over 2 hours. And watching the film, coming out of the movie, one of my thoughts was, boy, that could have lost an hour easily. Not that everything needs to be chop. It was just, maybe, I know there are people who love this. Obviously, there are enough critics or people who watched it and said something nice somewhere about it to fill a poster with it. But I will say, do not believe the words thriller or mystery. Technically, it's a mystery because you don't know why he's doing what he's doing until the end. But to me, it was just so not compelling. You know, it's an interesting location, and you see interesting aspects of that culture, I guess, but it's really mostly Tim Roth just looking off into the distance. So your mileage may vary. I'm sure there are people who really, really like this and will tell me how wrong I am about it, but it's just opinions, you know? And mine was that Sundown was kind of a snoozer.